Hey guys, today we're going to review the standard 4.15, which is to examine the legacy and significance of the presidency of George Washington, our first president. But we also have to learn and be reminded of the four men he created for his cabinet member positions, the cabinet who helps him do his duty, the two-party split. We looked a little bit at the Federalist and Anti-Federalist last week, and then the push for a strong central government, which of course the Federalists wanted. So look at our essential question here. How did the legacy of George Washington's presidency define the role of future presidents? I mean, he was the very first one, so he's kind of setting the example, right? Earlier in the year, we said he set the precedent for the president. And the precedent is the example. So future presidents would do many things that George Washington did as he was the first president. So let's learn about some of those things that he did. One of the things that he said is, "I walk on untrodden ground." George Washington made this comment many times leading up to his inauguration. What do you think this means? I walk on untrodden ground. I guess this is the word we need to make sure we understand. Untrodden. Let's break it down. So we've got a prefix here, un, and then we've got a suffix, the in. Okay, so in the middle here, we have this root word, trod. If you were trotting along, what would you be doing? You'd be walking, right? So he's walking on ground that's untrodden, that's not been walked on before. So what does that mean? Well, he's the first president. There was never a president of the United States before him. So he has no example to look at. He is going to be the example of what it means to be the president of the United States. He's the first one, so he has no example to use to help him. He just has to do what he thinks is right. Some words we're going to need to know for our little lesson today is legacy. That's something handed down from one period of time to another. Federalist Party, the political party that believed in a strong central government. The Democratic Republican Party, a political party that believed in states' rights over federal. We call them also anti-federalists. They wanted to limit the power of the federal government. A cabinet. George Washington picked four men to be his cabinet, a body of top leaders in the executive branch. A term, that's a period of time something lasts. One term of presidency is 4 years long. A model is a person or something that is an excellent example to follow. And a political party is an organized group of people with similar beliefs who want to get people elected to office who have the same beliefs. Now, George Washington was the nation's first president. I'm going to read through these slides, and you'll have some activities at the end on the last few slides. George Washington was the nation's first president. He was reluctant to become president, but ended up serving 2 terms, which is 8 years. He had to make many decisions how the new U.S. government would meet the needs of its citizens. Excuse me. George Washington was called the father of our country because he was the first president. He was a strong leader, and he was a model for future presidents. And don't forget, he was the general during the Revolutionary War, right? He was the one who fought and won and led the way for us to win our freedom and become a country. George Washington, he was a Federalist. He believed in a strong central government. He felt this was important to help the country grow. Washington, D.C. was named after George Washington in his honor. And during his presidency, the political parties began. Differences began to emerge when America's leaders were ratifying, accepting the Constitution. This led to a 2-party split, meaning 2 political parties were created. And remember, the Democratic Republican Party, we can also call them anti-federalists. This was just the official name of their party. And then the Federalist Party. Democratic Republican Party didn't want a strong federal government. The Federalist Party did. The Federalist Party was led by Alexander Hamilton, and its members wanted a strong central government. The Democratic Republican Party, you looked at some of these guys last week in your assignment, was led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Its members preferred states' rights over a strong central government. The 2 parties allowed American citizens to vote on which way they thought the country should go. In 1796, voters had their first opportunity to vote between the 2 candidates from the political parties. John Adams, a candidate from the Federalist Party, won the election. States' rights versus strong central government. In this election after George Washington finished his term in office, John Adams from the Federalist Party, a strong central government, won. And there was a creation of cabinet members. The word cabinetto in Italian means a small private room where people could talk privately. The word cabinet comes from this word. James Madison coined this term when the president met with other leaders to discuss important issues. The cabinet is the president's top leading advisors. These people advise the president on subjects relating to each member's office. The head of each department is called a secretary. Example, there's a Secretary of Education. An exception is the head of the Justice Department, who is called the Attorney General. President Washington created 4 cabinet member positions. The 4 cabinet member positions George Washington created in order to advise him were, number 1, the Secretary of State, which handles relationships with foreign countries. Thomas Jefferson was who George Washington picked to be his first Secretary of State. Second, there's the Secretary of Treasury, manage the money and the taxes for our country. George Washington chose Alexander Hamilton to be the first Secretary of the Treasury. A Secretary of War, it's now called the Secretary of Defense. This person handles the military matters of the country. George Washington chose Henry Knox to be the first Secretary of War. And then Attorney General, he handles law enforcement. Edmund Randolph was the first Attorney General. George Washington picked him. Now, you can find some more information on George Washington. You can read more about him. If you'd like to do that, I do want you to go to this slide and click on the quiz on George Washington, see how you do. It's not going to be turned into me. It's just something you do on your own. See how you do. How many can you get right out of 10? And then here's a page you'll have some fun with. You can click on these links and go to these. There's a crossword puzzle. Now, it'll tell you how to do this. So click a word in the puzzle to get started. So we're talking about George Washington. His nickname was blank of his country. What did we say? So 5 across. So it's not numbered, is it? This one might be hard to do. 1, 2, 3. Washington's VP. Oh, it tells you right there. We want to know, where did he spend the winter? His home in Virginia. Legend has he chopped this kind of tree down. Was it a cherry tree? So you just type it in the blank there. If I can spell it right. I'm going to click. Okay. It fits there. All right. So you go and just click on these, and this will tell you what they are down here, but it really tells you up here. So the war he fought in for American independence, we know that's the Revolutionary War. Click OK. All right. So there's a crossword puzzle you can work on. This is a fun one. This is a interactive word search. Words about George Washington. Martha. Oh, I see a word right here. All you do is click on the first letter and drag revolution. There it is. And I found that one. So you've got words to solve there. Find them in there. Okay. And I'm not going to go through all this. You got a jigsaw puzzle and you got pictures of George Washington. So that's one of the last slides there. All right. There's more information on today's cabinets on the next slide. If you want to see current cabinet members, there's a 10-question quiz on the executive branch. You worked on that last week. And there's our essential question again. How did the legacy of George Washington's presidency define the role of future presidents? Well, George Washington wanted to create an office that would make U.S. citizens trust in the presidency. He wanted to create a strong central government, did not want to create another country ruled by a king. He knew how he behaved was important and would set the way for future presidents. He relied on cabinet members to advise him. He was a model for how future presidents should behave. He believed in the Constitution and the freedom and voice of its citizens. He walked on untrodden ground, but he did a wonderful job, didn't he? Setting the precedent as our first president. All right, go through these slides, click on some of those links, find some words, do the word search, crossword, whatever you want to do. Enjoy a little bit of work today on George Washington. There's nothing to turn in, but I do want you to spend some time playing those games. All right, see you later.